There are a great number of ancient churches in York, and, not surprisingly, many of them have at least one supernatural tale to tell. The Holy Trinity on Micklegate, not to be confused with a church of the same name on Gudgeongate, is one such venerable building, only a few hundred yards from Micklegate Bower. Founded as a Benedictine monastery in 1089, the site had previously been the location of a house for secular canons, known as Christ Church. This connection with monks, nuns, and other similar individuals was continued in later years when the Sisters of the Bar Convent were buried on the site. However, there was an interruption to this association during the dissolution of the monasteries in the time of Henry VIII. It is said that during that period, when many religious buildings were being torn down, the Abbess from the convent, governed by the Holy Trinity Church, refused to allow a group of soldiers onto her premises, defiantly telling them that they could only gain access if she were dead, and that if they were to kill her, then she would return to haunt the place thereafter. Unfortunately, the soldiers ignored her warnings, slew her on the spot, and commenced the ruination of the edifice. Afterwards, the church was remodelled, but even so, the abbess kept her word, despite the changes to the building. Her ghost became bound to the property, and she has been seen many times over the following centuries by parishioners. In 1876, the Ripon and Richmond Chronicle related one such incident, which had happened a few years earlier on Good Friday, as described by a witness. This is her testament. I kept my eyes fixed upon the east window for nearly the whole of the hour and a half during which the service lasted, but was not favoured with the sight of the phenomenon, although others saw it cross the window and return, and my friend, who knows it well, called my attention to the fact at the moment, yet I could not perceive nothing. I therefore left the place as unbelieving as ever, and supposed that either I was the victim of a hoax, or that it required a stretch of imagination to fancy that a passing shadow was the desired object. However, not liking to discredit the statements of many friends who were used to seeing it almost every Sunday, I consented on Easter Day to go to the same place and pew. The seat I occupied was not an advantageous one, a large brass chandelier being between me and the lower panes of the window. In the middle of the service, my eyes, which had hardly once moved from the left or north side of the window, were attracted by a bright light formed like a female, robed and hooded, passing from north to south with a rapid gliding motion outside the church, apparently at some distance. The window is Gothic, and, I fancy, from 20 to 25 Through this rim, especially, could be seen what looked like a form transparent, but yet thick, if such a term can be used, with light. It did not resemble linen, for instance, but was far brighter, and would no doubt have been dazzling to a near observer. The robe was long and trailed. The figure was, of course, not visible when it had crossed the window and passed behind the wall. My friend whispered to me that it would must return, and at the end of 5 minutes or so, the same figure glided back from right to left, having turned round while out of sight. About half an hour later, it again passed across from north to south, and, having remained about 10 seconds only, returned with what I believe to have been the figure of a young child, and stopped at the last pane but one, where both vanished. I did not see the child again, but a few seconds afterwards the woman reappeared and completed the passage behind the last pane, very rapidly. Nothing more was seen during the service, and no other opportunity presented itself to me for making observations. During each time, the chandelier prevented me from obtaining a complete view. A certain amount of there could be no doubt as to this, however, being caused by the stained glass. On the reappearance for the last time, I saw the head, which was, I believe, that of the child, move up and down distinctly, as if nodding. The figure shone with dazzling brightness, and appeared to be at a considerable distance, say 30 yards or so, though at the same time as distinct as possible, considering the obstruction of coloured glass. Each time the level upon which it glided was precisely the same, and afterwards, on carrying a straight line from the spot, easily be seen through many houses on all sides. If it were a shadow thrown upon the glass of the window, it would, of course, be seen by those who sit in the body of the church, as well as those in the gallery. It cannot be a reflection on the principle of Pepper's ghost, which is produced by the figure actually being in a very strong light and appearing reflected on glass in a darkish spot. The lights both inside and outside of the church at York, which might be thought to produce the ghost, are precisely the reverse, and any figure required to be reproduced by reflection on the east window would have to be standing or walking in the centre of the aisle. For the above facts I can vouch, and I have no reason to believe that the following are either incorrect or exaggerated. It is said to appear very frequently on Trinity Sunday, and to bring two other figures onto the scene, another female, called the nurse, and the child. It is often seen as distinctly on a dark, rainy or snowy day as when the sun is shining. When I saw it, the sun was not bright. The motion is even, and not at all jerky. Sometimes it glides swiftly, at other times slowly. It cannot be a mere accidental reflection from a door or window, for instance, for the figure faces different ways according to the direction in which it is going, and it is not always alone, nor do the figures always act in concert. One of my friends, with a companion, has watched outside on the wall, where he had a full view of the whole place around during morning service. The ghost has been seen from the inside, while outside nothing was visible. It is said to have haunted the church for 150, 200, and some authorities say 300 years, and there are many pretty legends connected with it. One story relates that during the plague, some 200 years ago, a nurse and child died of the pestilence and were necessarily buried outside the city walls, while the unfortunate mother of the child at her death was interred in Holy Trinity churchyard. Here the mother waits and receives the nurse and child, weeping and wringing her hands before parting with them. The same scene is often enacted several times during the same day, and even during the same service. Whatever may have been the circumstances under which the ghost, if it is one, which it is hard to believe in these matter-of-fact days, commenced its peculiar promenade, I would recommend those who have the chance to go to Holy Trinity Church, York, and see for themselves. Though an audience of the apparition cannot always be assured, a ghost in broad daylight does no harm, frightens no one, and ought to interest everybody. So that was her testimony. Some, though, were sceptical of the phenomenon and argued that it might just be caused by the branches of a tree outside the window, blowing in the wind. One such person was a rector of the church who was so cocksure about the whole thing that he had the trees cut down in order to prove his point. His confidence was rewarded for a while thereafter, and sightings ceased completely. However, a few months later, his smugness turned to embarrassment, and the ghostly encounters resumed once more. First of all, during a wedding, and many, many times thereafter. Even today, there are those who believe that the sightings are caused by spirits that reside in the many recesses and crannies of the very fabric of the building itself, and that, rather than staying hidden, they are compelled to emerge from time to time, thus revealing their existence to those who are sensitive enough to see them, over and over